my mom almost died. She lost a lot of blood. I came out as a C-section, like everything went wrong. Even when she told me the story, my mom didn't feel supported, like really the opposite of a physiological birth. And I was scared. I was like, what if my first imprinting is a, into bracket, failed birth, in the sense of, like, it's, of course you can say it's not a failure, because nothing is a failure, but it was the opposite of the vision I had. So it's like, wow, if I had this experience as the first birth, how can I have another experience with the birth of my son? There I can connect you to your own project. You might tell me, that's how the previous project went. That's what I wasn't able to do. How can I imagine I can make it work? Here you need to do an intense rewiring and liberation work, and that's what I did. Welcome to the inner space. This is for you if you need encouragement to be more yourself and explore your own path. Maybe because you feel different, too sensitive, or just not able to do things as everyone else seems to. There is a way, and it's your unique way. I'm Gloria Jensen. I am a coach, a healing artist, and a surfer. I am here to help you ride the waves of life, work, and business to find that deeper alignment with your creative and sensitive soul. If this feels like you, I invite you to know yourself better, feel all the emotions, and trust yourself, so you experience the freedom and fulfillment of being and doing you. Subscribe now to catch the next wave to the inner space, where authenticity sets you free. This episode around giving birth is in two parts. The first part is really around preparing for birth, and the second part is around giving birth, so the experience. I'm going to talk about my own birth story as an illustration around the work you need to do yourself. Whether it's in the preparation phase, like the key steps you want to work around so that you give yourself the highest chances for your vision to happen. And then I'm going to give you like key elements as you're making this vision happen, like this new project is happening, how you are moving with the obstacles and what's happening so that you still trust yourself to move and make it happen. So listen to part one, listen to part two, they work together and they're most powerful both together. And let me know how it lands for you, whether you're a woman, maybe it's your own birth story that is going to be reawakened with that. Maybe also in a painful way, know that you can always heal around your birth. Maybe it's your own birth, and that's for men and women, that you need to work on as you listen to the episode. And more than that, for all of us, I hope this is insightful for you to give the highest chances for your deepest desires to really happen, and to make the experiences you desire for your life. Enjoy. This episode is for you if you have a new project that you want to create in your life, maybe a new life chapter, and you need to give birth to something new. And it's a very special episode because I'm going to use my own birth story, or I would say more the birth story of my son, to illustrate the steps I went through to make it happen. And of course, if you are pregnant, if you are giving birth, or if it's something you've experienced, you will be able to relate to it. If you are not, that's perfectly fine. I encourage you to make the bridge every time between your own project and what you want to give birth to. And also, I believe, even especially if you are a man, you are not going to give birth in your life, but you're giving birth, maybe not physiologically, but giving birth for sure to many projects. And it's interesting for you to also reflect on your birth story, maybe. That's just a question I return to you, and it might open new questions for you around that. Of course, for women as well who might not want to give birth. But you know, birth is, when we come to the earth, it's the first contact with the physical reality of outside of the womb of our mother. And this has a big impact, as you will hear also from my own story. I hope you will really love this episode. For me, it's a very special one because it's the first birth I gave for my first son. And it's really the end of my 2024 year. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you the episode Review 2024, which is, if I remember well, the episode 2, but you will find it in the notes of this episode. And in this episode, I really shared like different events and what was the topic of my year. And the word was self-trust. It was really about trusting myself. And as you will hear, it kept on going until the end of the year with giving birth to my son. Self-trust is also a super important word for me, for my clients. I talk about it a lot in different podcast episodes because I believe self-trust is one of the keys, if I had to name 3, to make the life happen that is the most aligned for you, that brings you joy, fulfillment, that brings you peace, serenity. Because only you have the answers, only you know how to move in your life, and it's much easier, much smoother, faster when you trust yourself. And it's not like an on and off button, like, yes, I trust myself, or no, I don't trust myself. There are areas in our lives where we trust ourselves more, others where we don't, others where we need to grow self-trust. And as you will hear from this episode, of course, I needed to grow self-trust in something I had never done. And this is also about the next project you are going to give birth in your life. You very probably, because it's new, have never done it. You can, of course, rely on skills you've used in other areas of your life, but still, it's new. Otherwise, it would be just a continuation of your life. And I guess if you are about and you would like to birth something new, it's because it's going to be something different and something you are looking to have or experience in your life. This podcast episode is in 2 parts. The first one is about the preparation. So before giving birth, again, I use it with my birth story, but really take it for your own project. So the preparation and then the experience of giving birth and what happens when it's happening. It's from preparing, how we maybe envision it, everything that is happening more on the mental level, how we imagine it, but we can only really grasp it once we are doing it. That you know. So there are 2 parts. First, the preparation and then the experience. And I hope it will be insightful for you, of course, to trust yourself and to know, especially it will be very practical to know what kind of work do I need to do so that I am able to birth my new project. And of course, if you have friends who are pregnant and who want to be very intentional on giving birth, please send this episode. And I also want to mention here that I am creating an art card deck because I'm also an artist for mothers, new mothers who are pregnant, have already given birth, and are in the postpartum journey, as I am, because my son is 8 months old when I record this podcast. He will be a bit older when you will listen to it. And my goal with this card deck is to help mothers get support on all levels: physical, energetical, spiritual, emotional, because that's a big journey, pregnancy and giving birth. And my art is encoded with symbols and colors to make these shifts on the frequency level. Here again, I encourage you to go into the notes, and you can always contact me if you have questions and you would like to benefit from that or other of my services. So here we go. Are you ready to go into birth preparation? So the phase before making it happen. If you have listened to my review of 2024, you know that as I was pregnant, I felt I needed to shift location. And that's the moment we moved to Miami. And also that I wanted to do a home birth. And you know that I had encountered already some obstacles, especially with my husband, because we didn't have the same vision. But it was super important for me because I'm the one giving birth. And I had told you like how I moved through that. I highly recommend you to listen to the episode. So what was my first step? It was developing my vision. How did I want to give birth? First step in your project is developing your vision. Here, some of you may say, yes, my vision is super clear. I would say, especially if in your human design you have a line 6, that's something in the shadow level that you need to work on it. But if you're in your gift frequency, you probably have already a vision. Then depending on some energy types in human design, it will be easier or not for you. You can always create your human design profile online. You type in Google free human design profile. I like to recommend Genetic Matrix, but you choose your own so that you can make connections with what I share. So you have this vision. If you don't have it, that's perfectly fine. You are not broken. I know how horrible it feels. You know, there's so much communication around first start with your vision, and then you don't have a vision, and you're like, well, I don't know. You will hear that first I had a vision, but how did this vision come up for me? I had actually had a chat with a friend of a friend. I believe it was 2 years before giving birth, and she was preparing for home birth. And as she told me the story, she told me like how she was preparing. She told me how her first birth went, how she wanted to prepare for the second one, and the book she was reading. And as I was listening to it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. I feel that's something I am drawn to. I would like probably to dig deeper into it when I will be pregnant and preparing for welcoming our first child. So my vision came up because I had been confronted with the topic before. My vision got clearer and bigger as I read books, listened to podcasts. Like I was already in the energy in the process much before being pregnant. Like I had listened to a podcast where women tell their birth stories. And for me, it got super clear that I wanted a physiological birth. Physiological means really moving with the rhythm of the body. I don't know how much in detail you want me to go in there, but we know that our body is made to give birth. Our body knows. And our baby they know how to come out by nature. So if we let the body do its work, it can happen. I wanted to prepare for a physiological birth, at least on my side, and I knew what I didn't want. So that's also a question you can ask yourself as you are developing your vision, like, what do I want? What do I see? What do I desire? What feels empowering to me? What feels like a story I would like to tell later on? That's also a good question. That's what I'm doing right now. So that you can go into the positive side, what is exciting to you, what makes you want to move, actually. And then if that helps you to refine your vision, and sometimes it's easier to start with the questions I'm going to propose you right now, which is more, what do I not want to experience? What do I want to avoid? Even though that's an interesting question, because you don't know if it's going to happen and some fears might come up. But if ideally it goes by plan, how would it not look like? That's where the preparation comes in, because I'm preparing to maximize the chances for my vision to happen, and I'm minimizing the chance for the things I don't want to experience. And I'm going to go back towards that. And especially you will see then the gap, more or less, between the preparation and the experience. So the second part of this episode. So you go back to your vision, you define really what you want to see happening, what's empowering, exciting to you, fun, what feels just expansive, like you're expanding into it, what feels contracting on the other side, what you don't want to see. So you clarify both sides. As I said before, there might be fears coming up, doubts, and that's already super interesting. As you're defining your vision, please take another paper and write down the fears, the doubts, everything that comes up in that moment, because that shows you the work you need to do so that your vision happens and not the vision of what you don't want. I'm saying maximizing the chances for what you want to happen. We don't have control over everything, and especially women who gave birth know that. That's part usually of the birth preparation, to remind you that. So you have your vision. First step for me, it was super clear. And as I worked on the vision, I immediately had fears coming up, and especially some beliefs. So a belief is really like a certainty you have about something. My belief was, because I moved to the US, I'm originally from Europe. I grew up in France. I know more Europe. Like, my husband is Italian, my family is from Germany, from Austria. I feel very much more at home in Europe in the sense of I understand the language perfectly, immediately. I know the rules, I know the culture. Yeah, I just know how to move easily. Like, when I'm in the US, it's I need to learn to acquire all these skills on all levels. If I would have given birth in France, I already had the context. I knew the midwife who could give birth at home. I knew with whom to prepare. Like, it was so easy. And in the US, it was the opposite. I didn't know anyone. And I also wanted to move to Miami. That was also an intuition that came from pregnancy, from my son. And as I moved to Miami, I was in the 3rd trimester. So I really didn't know many people. And my biggest fear, so, I had this vision of how I wanted to give birth. And my biggest fear was, will I find people who are aligned with my vision, who will enable me to make it happen? And especially my big belief was, it's much easier to find professionals in France. Of course, it was a reality in the sense of I knew people there. I don't know anyone in the US. And it's crazy to say it now because I've made the experience after, but I didn't believe I would be able to find people, the team that would be aligned with my vision. So many times I questioned myself. I was like, maybe I go back to France to give birth, because in America it seemed almost impossible to do what I desired. So here you see, if I have this belief, again, go back to your project, which are the beliefs holding you back. If you have this belief, like, it's a major obstacle for your vision. And belief is real and not real. What do I mean? It's a certainty. So for us, it feels like reality. And yes, I can confirm you, like, there are people in America who are not working very much aligned with the vision I had of birth. For sure, it's a reality. I'm not doubting it. Like, that's for sure a reality. But I needed to open in myself the door, the possibility that there are people also who see giving birth like I do and who will empower me in this process. So I had a big work to do around my beliefs of what is really possible in America and how quickly will I find the people I need, because, I arrived there. Usually it's more difficult to find also doctors when you're at the end of the pregnancy. Some don't want to take the risk. And then, like, there were many factors, but I had to hold on to the vision and the possibility that there are people out there who are going to team up with me. Same for you, like, if you need a team to work with you, or one person, or different people to make your project happen, what do you believe? Sometimes, as I did, it's geographic location related. Maybe you think, okay, where I live, there is no one working like that. People are like this here. I don't live in the right place to make it happen. Like, really go deeper into that and challenge it, of course. So I had to shift that belief. And also then I had to work around my fears, especially giving birth. You have never given it. There are so many stories. There are main stories that say giving birth is very painful. You can't do it without the epidural. Giving birth at home is super risky. So there are many stories around that. If you tune into these stories, you will not make the vision you have happen. It's too scary. And especially when your partner has similar beliefs, because he didn't work on. So I had exactly to work around that. And I often say, like, when you have a new business and then your partner might not be supporting you, or your family, or you want to do something in your life like moving location, and the person with whom you are is not into this dynamic. So that makes it even harder to make it happen. And for me, like, it's my son, of course, but it's also the son of my husband. So I can't decide for him something that he's also co-experiencing. But it's my body, I'm giving birth. So it was like a big challenge working also around that. So if we sum up so far, you have your vision of what you want, what you don't want around your next chapter. You have your fears, you have your beliefs, like we all have. And then you have people who stand by your side or not. And as I shared the story with my husband, it's so hard. when people who are super close to you are not aligned with your vision. And for me, I remember I got support during all this birth preparation. And I remember talking with Freya, who supported me. I will also put in the notes the link to her program. Her program is called Embodied Birth. So she's really working around preparing the birth on all levels and making happen what you most want through your birth. And as I was chatting with her, and I remember I was like, hey, Freya, I don't know if I can make it happen and do a home birth if my husband, who is the main character supporting me in this journey, if he's not into it. I can't remember what she said. I just sat with that and I really thought about it. And I was like, okay, at some point, first I was really kind of in the struggle of trying to make him shift, trying to convince him, then sharing how also emotional it made me feel to think if he's not into it. But for me, it was a super important project. For him, it was super scary to do a home birth. I guess many other people would also recognize themselves in his position. But for me, I felt in my body, it was like, I cannot do what he wants or how he wants it to happen. Like, it was impossible for me. I really was super connected to my body. I was like, this is super important for me. I cannot do it in another way. And I stayed on my line. I was like, okay, I will stop putting any pressure, any questioning challenges around my desire, how I wanted to give birth. We'll just move on. And from that moment, I actually gave him the space to move in his own rhythm. And I should have known because I know his human design. And it's interesting because from the moment I stopped wanting to have his support, I gave him space. And I started to really just focus on myself and on, let's see. For sure, also, I had planned to have a doula with me. And I was like, okay, I will work with her. And we'll see if he joins me or not. But that was really not easy. Really not easy. I remember having very hard, emotionally loaded conversation. You can imagine why. Like, it's the life of someone that we care already a lot, which is our baby. So it's not an innocent or light conversation, but it's the same with your life. You know, sometimes it's moving in a different place. Sometimes it's stopping an employed job and creating your business, which has potentially an impact on the finances of the family. Other project might be, I want to be gone for 1 month. I want to do that. Like, of course, these bring super important conversations. So if I go back to now the team I created around me, because I told you, like, I had the belief that it would be super hard, or there were not so many people who would be aligned where I live. And you have to imagine I gave birth in Miami, and already the US has a very high level of C-section. Florida and Miami has even a higher percentage of C-section if you compare it with other places in the US. I was like, that's interesting, because that's really not the kind of place where it's going to be easy to find people who align with you. I was like, okay, let's start with the rare connections I have. And I started to have chat with women who had given birth. And I told them, like, my goal is to do a home birth without the epidural. And immediately I had the question, like, how pain sensitive are you? I was like, well, actually, I am quite sensitive to pain. And from that moment, you know, only these questions started to create doubt again of, will I be able to do what I had envisioned? Again, not easy to move forward, but it's the same. Like, I'm telling about how I prepared for birth, but you have the same in your own projects. Some people are going to, I'm not going to say test, but an invitation to work again and stabilizing into your own desire. Though I cannot negate, it's still hard to move when you have all these feedbacks. So I started doing my online research. I'm like, okay, let's start. We're trying to find a doula. I was not even sure I wanted one. I didn't know so much about it, but I was like, let's see. It might be easier. And I started to have chat with some doulas every time I was connected to my baby, seeing how he reacts as well, like to the encounters, because he's part of the team as well. So he needs to be fine and happy with the person I choose. Had several conversations, and then at some point I had with one. And I was like, I sensed this person could be right. It was quite funny because she had a painting behind her. And I loved the painting. I was like, wow, this is such a powerful painting. If you know me, you know I'm also an artist. I paint and I do energy work through my drawings. I was like, who painted what you have behind? And then she told me the story. I think it was her grandparents or grandfather who did also some medicine in the painting. I was like, now I get why. And for me, it was a clear sign. It was something like, interesting. And then you jump because, you know, I had a conversation with her maybe half an hour. You never know. You trust your intuition, your feeling, and then you go. It turned out to be a very good decision. And she started to give me contacts about with whom could I work when I arrived, who could I reach out to. You see, it's like really, as you see, as I'm describing, is we always start somewhere. And then being connected to your intuition, being connected to what you sense, you meet one person and then she brings you to something else. But at some point, you need to open yourself up to the idea that it can work out. And then you get the people who are aligned with this frequency. And this doula actually helped me then to find the midwife we worked with. But before I go into that, part of my team, I told you I worked with Freya. She had also a group of other women giving birth who are wonderful. And with her, what kind of work did I do? I did really the work around my fears, around my own birth. I told you at the beginning of this episode, when we work around giving birth, we work on our own birth. It may seem quite obvious that we do it for like giving birth physiologically, but as I worked around my own birth story, I was like, everyone should work around their own birth story. This is an invitation. If you want to do it, of course, reach out to me. You can also reach out to Freya if you feel that's the kind of support you would like to have. She's wonderful. And to tell you how your body lives and experiences things, when I support my clients, I tell them, like, we can talk things through, but the memory is in your body. And like everyone says, you don't have any memories of your birth. Like, I also often hear like, oh, even when you talk about your kids, you're like, they're going to forget. Well, yes and no. Of course, I can't describe with the words I have today. If I would talk, I don't know, about what I did last summer. It's a very clear memory. I can tell you where I went, what I did. But if I talk about my own birth, I have a cellular memory. I'm saying that because as we did the birth work, I reconnected to it. It was very intense. We did like a meditation, visualization, like all the work around what had happened, because I knew my own birth was very difficult. My mom almost died. She lost a lot of blood. I came out as a C-section, like everything went wrong. Even when she told me the story, my mom didn't feel supported, like really the opposite of a physiological birth. And I was scared. I was like, what if my first imprinting is a, into bracket, failed birth, in the sense of, like, it's, of course you can say it's not a failure because nothing is a failure, but it was the opposite of the vision I had. So it's like, wow, if I had this experience as the first birth, how can I have another experience with the birth of my son? There I can connect you to your own project. You might tell me, that's how the previous project went. That's what I wasn't able to do. How can I imagine I can make it work? Here you need to do an intense rewiring and liberation work, and that's what I did. I went into the story, I talked with Freya, we did some body work, and the funny thing is, it was not even during the session, but 1 or 2 nights later, I woke up, and oh my God, like, you can't imagine, or you maybe imagine with your own story, the sensation I had in my body. Suddenly I felt what I had felt after coming out of the womb of my mother, because I came out and because she was in such an emergency situation, they took me out. They brought me, you know, in the stations at that time where babies are by themselves. And of course they had to check the vital signs, but I was left by myself for at least 4 hours. My dad was not with me and I was just by myself. And it's only afterwards that they brought me back to my mother, who luckily had survived to it and felt a bit better after just the surgery. And like finding her back was a relief, but I felt in that moment the experience as a baby of Just before I was with my mother, I came out. I sensed she was in a live or die situation. They put me away and they didn't tell me anything. And I didn't know if I would see my mother again. I didn't know if she was dead or not. Just before I was part of her, then I was by myself. And what stayed with me is the sensation of intense fear, loneliness, but it was horrible, like really horrible. I can tell you the sensation because that's the memory I have, because your body has the memory inside. And luckily that night I had my partner with me and he didn't know about any of that. But like just having him releasing and going back to my body, letting it go, because that's the only thing we can do. Like we need in that moment to let ourselves experience it in a safe space, of course, and release it. I also had to work again with Freya around that so that I could really let myself release it in safety. That's also the kind of work I propose, because it's hard just by yourself. You can do it, but maybe you want support. And it was so intense. I think I didn't have much experiences like that one. It made me also understand so many things about how I lead projects, how sometimes it's hard for me to initiate a project. And once I'm in this, it's fine, because if your first initial experience, is having difficulties birthing, then you have an imprinting. I understand also how I take decisions. Like it really enlightened so many things for me. And also this very deep experience, because I first experienced death or questioning a doubt. And almost I really was super close to this sensation and energy because of my mother. And then a few hours later, when I met her, I was into love, because that, and she also described it to me, then seeing her again, and she was so happy to see me again. Like we were both alive. Like even when I talk about it, I have emotions coming up. So this experience has imprinted my journey, like experiencing death and love, two very opposite energy. And this depth of experience makes me who I am and how I work today. Because it's not that I can say I had a horrible childhood. I know I work with some people who have deep trauma. I believe I was lucky. Of course, I have my own experiences, but mostly I had part of my environment which was really safe. But this initial experience of death and love is something I know gave depth to my soul to be able to work how I work today. It was very interesting to me. So this is an invitation for you to look into your birth story, if that resonates, if you feel called to go into it deeper. For me, this work enabled me also to say, okay, I've done the work around my own birth. Now I'm ready for a new story with my baby, so that I don't come with all the fears, and that all of that, is like kind of putting a blanket over the experience I'm going to have, so that we both, my baby and I, can have a new experience, as you want to have a new experience in the next project you are birthing. That shows you the depth of work we sometimes need to do. I told you about having a vision, working around your beliefs. For me, it was a lot around, am I able to do a physiological birth in the US? Will I find people who support my vision? I'm going to tell you more about that. And then the fear of, will I repeat my own story? And of course, the fear of, am I too sensitive to pain? Will I be able to make it happen? And that's a question many women have who choose that path or who want to go onto that path. So this shows you what you want to sit with and work around, so that you can prepare for your next phase and your next project. If I continue, I'm telling you just a bit more about the team. So I opened myself up, like deconstructing my belief, and I finally ended finding amazing people. Like my doula turned out to be amazing. She put me in touch with a midwife who helped us, and also encountering her for my husband to talk things through, express his doubts. He still had doubts until the end, but he shifted slightly with all the voices he heard, the perspectives from other professionals, and we went on to that journey. So I was preparing for the home birth. But as I was preparing, I told to Freya, who supported me, I was like, it's weird, I came to you at the beginning of working together. I had this very clear vision of, I want a physiological birth. I want ideally him to come up without epidural. That's how I want to live birth. But as closer we came to the end, I was like, but it's weird, because I have a blank page when I see it happening. So I have a vision which is super strong, but then when I connect to the event, it's a blank page. Like it's almost, I cannot see it happening at home. Like she told me, prepare an altar, prepare some images, phrases that is going to support, prepare a space where you're going to give birth. And I had difficulties doing that. I felt it's weird. And in the second part of this episode, you will understand afterwards why. But that was it. I didn't know more. We come closer to the end. And we have a little issue, which is our baby's breech, which means head up. And as you know, a baby's best physiological position, at least I haven't phrased it well, a baby's most liked position from professionals is baby is head down, because that's almost more than 90% of the births. And breech births are like 3-4%, if I remember well the numbers of births. So here we are. My midwife tells me, you know, that legally I am not allowed to give birth to a breech baby at home. You would need to go to the hospital. And I was like, okay, but how do we do? She said, we'll check until the end. He might turn around and I will come early enough at home if he's head up, and then you would need to transfer to the hospital. And then I started to feel the stress. I was like, oh no, he's not in the position to make my vision happen. We did one ultrasound where he was head up, then he seemed to have turned again as my midwife checked. But I remember the first time we did the ultrasound and he was head up, I had a sense inside of me of deception, probably like, or disappointment. You all know. So really something that stayed with me. And my husband told me, oh, he has time to turn around, don't worry. I already had a sense inside that I can make sense later on as I experienced it. But I was like, it might not be possible. But I still had faith, and we did a lot of things to turn him around. There are so many things. He had turned again. So that was like, he was turning, he had a lot of space, but I had still my vision. We worked around that. My doula was also pretty confident, saying, we prepare for home and so on. So that was all the work I did to prepare for the birth. What happened on the Labor Day is a story for another episode. It's the climax, I would say, of what I want to share you with this episode. It's more than, of course, my birth story that is, I hope, giving you clues and will be insightful. Is really to explain for you, for your own project, what's the difference between preparing and then living the experience, and how we adapt and how we react, depending on how much things go like we planned them or not. So I'm looking forward to find you in the second part of this episode. Please share this episode with any mother who you think it would be helpful for. And more than that, if you see people who are in this project phase, to ask themselves the right questions around preparing it. And we see each other in the next part for the experience. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining the Inner Space. Make sure to subscribe, leave a comment, or share it with someone who might need exactly this encouragement. And until next time, keep exploring your inner space, where authenticity sets you free.